Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I am your guide, Derek Hayes. Welcome, folks, to another installment of your favorite paranormal call-in show. I have quite the specimen on display for you here this evening. Calls about shadow entities, winged weirdos, synchronized strangers, and a whole lot more. And of course, to the best of my knowledge, each and every call shared here on the program is 100% factual. They've all been submitted via my 24/7 hotline that I'll share more about here in a bit. And in addition to all that, each call shared tonight is downright hair-raising. Beginning with this wicked experience from Joe, up there in Big Sky Country.
Hey, this is Joe. I'm from Montana. I've been listening to your podcast all day today. Some of your stories reminded me of a story quite a long time ago. It was back in high school. Me and 4 of my friends actually went to a cemetery we have here in Missoula. And we decided to go in there for a little trip. So we went in, and there's 5 of us. I was in the front, me, another guy, and 2 girls. But the cemetery leads up to the highway, so we decided to jump the fence and go up to the back of the cemetery and back. And so we were there about 9:30 at night. It took us maybe an hour to do. And then it was kind of spooky, quiet, and just had a weird feeling about being there. And so we got all the way up to the highway. It was pretty quiet. Then we did up there for a little bit, turned around, came back to the gate, and my friend jumped over the fence. I helped the 2 girls jump the fence, and then I jumped the fence. And we only had 2 cars. And so once I landed on the outside of the fence, I saw a 6-foot black snake-like thing go from underneath my friend's car to underneath my car. And so I wound up having one of my friends drive my car, and we took the girls home. One of the girls was on the other side of town, so we took her home first. And then we went to the fort here in Missoula, and I was having my friend drive. And we got almost through the fort, and my friend slammed on the brakes, and he slid, and he woke us all up. And I looked at him, and I asked him what the hell was he doing? And his face was like he's seen something, I don't know, like pale white. And I asked him, what's wrong? And he told me that he just hit somebody. I looked at him like, what are you talking about? He's like, I literally just hit somebody. And so me, him, and the other guy, we all got out of the car. We walked back to where the skid marks started. And there was no body, no nothing. It was a crystal clear night, and the 3 of us started walking back to the car, and one of the girls took a picture of us, and there was orbs everywhere in the picture, and faintly there was 4 of us in the picture, not just 3. But that's my story. I've really loved hearing your podcast. And keep it spooky. Bye.
Thank you, Joe. Now, as terrifying as it might be to hit someone with your vehicle, only for them to disappear into the darkness, but we've covered that plenty of times here on the program. Instead, let's focus on the strange snake that Joe saw prior to the accident. The show is called Monsters Among Us, after all. What's more monstrous than a giant snake? But to be honest, 6 foot isn't very big for a snake. The largest snake found in Montana is the bull snake, or the gopher snake, which can grow up to 7 feet in length. I actually saved 2 of these beauties off local roads in the last couple of weeks while out riding my dune buggy. They can get sizable and sometimes ornery, but nothing that I would label a monster. However, giant snakes have been in the news lately. Just a few weeks ago, it was announced that fossils from what is now known as the largest snake to ever slither the earth were found. They call it Vasuki indictus.
So what would you do if you found a snake as long as a school bus and as heavy as a car? You're not going to, but researchers found these snake fossils near a coal mine in India. They discovered it was a species they'd never seen before. They named it Vasuki indicus after a mythical Hindi snake king. According to the journal Scientific Reports, the snake could have been between 36 and 50 feet long. Now, because of its size, researchers think it was a very slow-moving creature. They believe it lived around 47 million years ago, so don't go looking for one. But that's interesting. I love when they find new species or new animals that we had no idea even exist.
Now, that clip courtesy of KVUE, ABC News out of Austin. And imagine running into one of those snakes, Joe. You think a 6-foot black snake is spooky. How about a snake the size of a tanker truck? Now, on a somewhat related note, there was a video released recently in where an elderly woman was attacked and eaten by a python over in Indonesia. Now, I'm not going to play a clip from those tragic events or anything, but I will link to it in the show notes if you're morbidly curious. And believe it or not, that snake was only about 16 feet long. So just imagine what the Vasuki indictus would have been capable of. But it's now long extinct and half a world away. So Joe in Montana has nothing to worry about. Right? Well, not so fast, my friend. Depending on which part of Montana he's in, he could be relatively close to a body of water that's said to harbor a snake-like creature that's just as large as the Vasuki indictus. And it even has a cute, cartoonish name. They call it the Manipogo.
One of the great figures in Canadian folklore lies somewhere in the depths of Lake Manitoba, the Manipogo sea monster. The monster is predicted to be anywhere from 12 to 50 feet long, depending on the eyewitness. Sightings of the monster go back centuries, with indigenous people of the surrounding areas telling oral legends of a serpent-like creature in the lake. In 1948, C.P. Alric reported a large creature that rose from the lake and gave a dinosaur-esque cry. Similarly, the snake-like creature was spotted by a couple in the 1960s, no more than 60 yards from their boat. In 2004, a commercial fisherman reported that several of his fishing nets that were cast near the Narrows had been torn up with damage, similar to what a shark or killer whale would do in the ocean. Although the descriptions vary, there's no question that something strange lurks in Lake Manitoba.
Now, that clip via the Travel Manitoba TikTok page, a tourism account for the area. And I'd have to think a snake that size would spend most of its time in the water, where its weight and girth wouldn't be so much of a burden. Not too unlike the giant anacondas that still roam the earth today. And up that direction, there are a lot of bodies of water. So a giant snake-like creature cruising the waters of south-central Canada sort of makes a bit of sense to me. Can they survive the long, treacherous winter? That's the real question. Either way, thank you, Joe, for allowing me to go on a bit of a giant snake tangent. I've been wanting to share that recent discovery for some time now, and I'm pretty excited. that I finally got to do it.
Back in the clip machine here. That's the first things I thought of. You should go out, which is true, by the way. I have to go with the guys in their minute.
All right, this next one is a strange one. But hell, aren't they all? Kay from Pennsylvania. Tell us how yours might be different.
Hi, Derek. My name is Kay. I'm from the suburbs of Philadelphia, and this is actually where the story happened. It was in one of the houses we lived in when I was very young. I was about 5 years old. My parents bought this old farmhouse, this old stone farmhouse. It was a very big move for them. There's a lot of stories about this house that I can get into later, but or not. But the one thing specifically I wanted to talk about is because something happened in this house that I haven't heard anybody else talk about, and I want to see if anybody else has had this experience. So I was about 5 years old at this point when we lived in the house. I would be in the kitchen with my mom a lot of the time, and one wall in the kitchen facing southwest, every once in a while this would happen where the wall would start to shimmer and glimmer to me. And I remember thinking it was so funny and laughing. My mom really didn't like this, didn't see this happening. The wall would start to move. It would separate from the wall, this shimmering square, and would move across the room towards the opposite wall. I would be sitting at the table when this happened. It happened multiple times. I remember that I would giggle and laugh. I thought it was so funny. My mom really didn't like it. When it would pass through me on the other side, it like felt funny, and I would laugh. And it got to the point where my mom would yell at me when this would happen because I think she would get so upset. She didn't like this house. She told me later a lot of things about this house really freaked her out. She told me I used to call it the shimmer wall. I don't remember saying that, but I'll take her word for it. I know this sounds crazy, but I remember it very vividly, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and your podcast, which I love. I haven't heard anything like this, and maybe it was my imagination, but maybe not. And I guess I'm just sharing it to see if anybody else had a similar experience. Thank you. I enjoy your podcast. It's great. Bye.
Thank you, Kay. How about it, folks? Anyone ever experienced something strange like this? Or has anyone ever even heard of anything like this? It doesn't seem to ring any bells with me. Certainly doesn't jog any memories. But if you do have some information, or any true paranormal story you would like to share here on the program, call our hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. And if you're calling from overseas or out of the country, just record your story on a voice memo on your phone and email it to me at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to call from a quiet location, one that's not moving, preferably. One story per call, unless they tie in together. And please, if you get cut off, call back in and finish the story. Otherwise, I'm left with half a tale that I can do nothing with. Again, that number is 888-608-NIGHT. Now, tonight's subsequent call comes to us from my state of California. Tina, welcome to the show.
Hi, Derek. This is Tina from Northern California. I was listening to somebody talking about seeing a person in the middle of the road in the middle of nowhere, and that got me remembering something that happened to me when I was around 20. I was living by myself in a little apartment up in the foothills, so like below Tahoe area. So it's kind of woodsy. It's not very dense with like neighborhoods and stuff. There's houses everywhere, but it's pretty spread out. So I went to visit a friend who lived about a mile away from me in the same little town, and I left her house around, 11:30. It was really late. And as I'm leaving her house, it's a little tiny lane that goes down a hill and turns, and then there's this 90-degree turn to go back up towards the main road to go back to my house. But as you're coming to this 90-degree turn, there's just nothing. It's all like prairie or meadow. I guess you would say it was more of a meadow. Trees way off in the distance, but there's nothing there. So as I'm driving, the only lights are my headlights. It's totally quiet, no street lights. And I see something laying just past the 90-degree turn. You know, my eyes are trying to figure out what the heck I'm seeing. As I get closer to it, it looks like a woman is laying down with her back towards me on her side with, I remember she just had like long hair all strewn out and jeans, and I don't know what kind of shirt she was wearing, but I sat there and watched her laying there like, what am I seeing? This isn't right. And all of a sudden, I just got like so scared. And I've seen a lot of stuff in my life, and I have not ever really been scared. Like, things are creepy, a little perplexing, but this like made every hair on my body stand up. So I booked it out there, and I went to my apartment, and I woke up my roommate, and I was like, I just saw a person laying in the field. Like, I think I saw a dead body. And he's like, well, let's go. So he jumps out of bed. We go back. We drive by, and right away I can see there's nothing there. But I drive all the way down. I flip a U-turn, and I recreate the scene. So I'm coming up, and there's nothing there. There's no log. There's no rocks. There's no bush, leaves. There's nothing on the ground where I saw this person. And I was like, I swear to God, it was there. And he just says, yes, I believe you. I totally believe you. Let's get out and look around. And I was so overwhelmed with this is a trap. We can't get out of the car. Something's really wrong. We have to just go. And he's like, let's get out. Let's look. I said, no, we're leaving. We got to go home. And just booked it home and tried to go to bed. But that was super spooky. And I can still picture the hair and the person laying there. So I don't know what that was, but I just wanted to share that. I hope you like my story, and I love this podcast. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for calling in, Tina. Now, if I didn't know any better, I'd say that you had a run-in with the little-known but much-feared beast of the Sierras, known simply as Penelope. Here is what the website Weird California has to say about this monstrous maiden. Every now and then, someone sees or runs across a large, vicious, horrid humanoid creature roaming the Sierra Nevadas, said to be a female, thin and 7 feet tall, with long arms and long legs, a deformed face, and long, dirty, light-colored hair. This bestial creature is known as Penelope, and she is the subject of urban legend in the area. Park rangers have documented a few strange sightings over the years in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and these encounters have been attributed to this creature, who for some reason is referred to as Penelope. She has been described as wearing no clothes, looking like a bestial giant witch, and rumored to be lightning fast with razor-sharp claws. She has supposedly disemboweled or even decapitated her victims before they even realize that she is there, moving so fast they have no time to react before she is upon them. Who is she? Where did she come from? No one is sure, but the short version of the urban legend describes her as a woman who became lost in the Sierra Nevadas and somehow turned into this flesh-eating monster that terrorizes the region today. Well, that's spooky stuff, and certainly seems similar to what Tina just described, except for one minor detail. Did you happen to catch it? That's right. It was the hair color. Tina described the hair on the entity she saw as dark brown or black, and historically, Penelope's hair, whatever the hell she might be, is often said to be blonde or light-colored. Now, I have two thoughts here. Firstly, I read several reports that also claim Penelope has dark hair as well, but those more reputable sources suggested a lighter hue. So maybe there's some sort of mix-up there. But I have an explanation for this little discrepancy. You see, even some light-colored hair looks dark when it's wet and matted. So perhaps in the darkness, and if the mystery figure was sporting sopping wet locks, the color was incorrectly identified. Perhaps the entity's hair seemed darker because of its filthy state. Well, either way, we do appreciate the call, Tina. It's not every day I get to talk about Penelope, but trust me, whenever I'm up in the Sierra Nevadas, she's on the forefront of my mind. And speaking of discrepancies, last week I made a rare mistake and accidentally said that Crystal, who actually hails from Washington State, was from Canada. Well, I clearly got some wires crossed there, and for that I apologize. And a big thanks, I guess, to everyone that pointed out my mistake. It ain't the first, and it certainly won't be the last, but we do our best to stay factual here on the show. So I wanted to clear that little mistake up. Now, moving on. I can do one more story before we have to take another break. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Lily to tonight's program.
Hi, Derek. I love your podcast and your fan stories. And I was introduced to your podcast by my boyfriend, and my story is about aliens. So basically, this incident occurred on June 17th of 2020, and it was around 1:20 in the morning. And at the time, I had shared a room with my brother, and we were talking together late at night because it was summer. And I went to the bathroom, and I came back, and he told me he had heard a strange noise. And at first, I didn't really believe him because I thought he was trying to prank me or scare me or something like that. So we were in our room together, and it was probably about 20 minutes since then. And he was telling me maybe the noise would come back because he really wanted me to hear it because he couldn't believe the noise he heard. So we had continued our conversation, and later on in the night, I heard the noise. And this noise still scares me till this day. And the easiest way I can explain it is that it sounded like an alien ship either landing or taking off. And the sound was very, very close. It sounded like it was maybe a few houses down from us, if that. The sound was very tacky and eerie all at the same time. And my brother and I just kind of looked at each other and we froze. And we ran to our parents' room, and we woke up our dad, and we told him the noise we heard. And he came to our room basically to try to see if he could hear the sound that we heard. And of course, no sound ever came back. So in total, we only heard this sound twice. My brother heard it twice, and I heard it once. And my brother and I probably stayed up till about 4 a.m. just to see if we can hear it again. And we were discussing all the possibilities of what it could be, Honestly, truly, to this day, I believe it was something to do with aliens. It sounded so much like a ship landing. I just can't explain it. I tried looking on YouTube of certain sounds, and I can't really pinpoint an exact sound, but it does sound very, very similar to something like that. When I was researching, though, that night, I found one article, and it was talking about something called the hum, which claims to be a widespread low-frequency humming, rumbling, or droning sound, which is not audible to all people. And this is the only thing I can possibly think of to explain this, or I don't know, maybe it really was an alien ship landing, but, to this day, I have no idea what it really was, and I've not heard this sound since, and I'm just curious to know if anybody else has heard this sound because it was so close and, it was just very, very scary to hear this late at night. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Thank you, Lily. That is very unsettling. And if you want my professional opinion, I'm not sure this is related to the infamous hum activity at all. Several places around the world have them. The Taos hum in New Mexico, for example, or the Auckland hum in New Zealand, or the Windsor hum in Canada. This phenomenon does exist. But to me, this sounds somehow much more ominous, if that makes any sense. And I have that opinion because I have another report I'm going to share in tonight's Beyond episode that seems to share many, if not all, of the attributes in Lily's encounter. So be sure to stick around for that. And I'll tell you how you can tune in and even do it for free at the very end of this program. So I'll save any further commentary until then. But I will say, thank you, Lily, once again for calling in. I'm excited to compare these two unsettling entries.
Whether or not that works, they're going to be coming from.
Visit 4630 in just moments before they sell out.
Okay. So this next entry takes psychic ability to creepy extremes. Christine from Washington State. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Derek. My name is Christine. I'm calling from Washington, but my story or my experience took place in Southern California. I only think that this would be a supernatural story based off of what has happened since then, but it might be a let's not meet story because it has to do with a medium and something that they told me a few years back. So this happened in the summer of 2004, and I remember that because I turned 18 and I was working at a pool as a lifeguard. I was, checking everyone in, which means I was in the front of the building. Mind you, I'm 18, I'm wearing a bathing suit and pretty much nothing else, and I'm by myself at the front. So I was very cautious of people. And as I'm checking everyone in, a family comes in that I don't recognize, and a man with long hair, dark skin, and he came up and he was kind of creepy, but I think he was just trying to be nice, and I just was not comfortable. And he said, "I need to read you." And I was confused. And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm a medium, and they're telling me I need to talk to you." And I was like, okay. And he had to be in his 30s or something. But he then followed his family and he said, "I'm going to come back and talk to you." And I was like, "No, thank you." But he left, and the lines died down. Everyone was going inside, and I had about 20 more minutes till I needed to close cash and go out. And I called my manager on the walkie-talkie, and I was like, "Hey, I got creeped out. Can I close up early, 15 minutes early?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Do you need me up there?" And I'm like, "No, it's okay. I'm just going to close out early just to let you know." So I was closing out 15 minutes earlier, and this guy comes running back out from the showers, right? And he runs out, and he says, "I'm glad I caught you. I need to talk to you." And I was like, "What?" So I'm alone with this older man, and I'm, uncomfortable. I'm in a bathing suit. I'm nervous, right? And he starts telling me all these things, and he's like, "Can I read your palm?" And, I was, ladies, especially young girls, if you feel uncomfortable, just tell them no. It's okay. And I was not in that kind of mindset, and I gave in. I just handed my hand over to them, and he starts reading my palm, and he starts, rubs my arm, and I'm feeling so uncomfortable. And I'm thinking, this guy's just a creep. He's just a creep. Well, he starts saying some stuff. The first thing he says was, "Well, you're not a virgin." And I was like, well, that's of course, what a creepy thing to say. You're just creepy, right? And so I'm like, okay. I didn't really give a confirmation. I just said, okay, move on. And then he said, okay, so it looks like you're going to have a nice life. Your lifeline is healthy. You're going to have a good life. I see that you're going to get married, but you're going to get married twice. And the problem is I can't see whether it's by death or divorce, but you are going to get married twice. And I was like, well, that doesn't give me any answers. That tells me nothing. You can't tell if it's death or divorce, but you're just saying I'm going to get, something has to happen, right? So I just, okay, this is crazy. That's weird. And then he gets really somber, and he says, "I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you're going to have 3 children, and one of them is going to die." And my heart kind of dropped, and I was like, what, why are you doing this to me? You're such a weirdo. You're so creepy. Why are you doing this? And I'm thinking, this man is just here to make me uncomfortable. And he did tell me other things. He read other things on my palm, I guess. And I don't remember them because I was so upset, and I'm shaking now just remembering that feeling. But he did tell me other things. I just don't remember them. So I was obviously upset because who says that to an 18-year-old? Your kid's going to die. And so I went to my manager, and I was visibly upset, and I was crying. And I said the guy came back, and I told him all the things that he told me. I told him that, he said, "Kid's going to die," and I was just very upset. And my manager, who is atheist and he does not believe in anything, and he was like, you have to ignore that. Like, that guy was just a weirdo. Like, why would anyone say that to someone and look how upset you are? Why would someone, like that was weird. Don't worry about it. He's just messing with you, essentially. Well, I kind of shake it off and I move on, and, years start passing, and I start dating my now husband, and we've been together. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. But, a few years after that, I would say 3 to 4 years after that, and I'm talking with one of my friends, and she's telling me, we're swapping like paranormal stories, essentially. And I was like, yeah, I had a supernatural thing. I'd say, well, I guess, I don't know if I believe in mediums, because you might think it's not supernatural, that it's just, yeah, there's mediums in the world. And then you might see it how I see it, where I didn't believe in them, and then something happened, and we were telling, and I started explaining what he said to me and relaying this story again. And when me and my husband got married, he was being deployed. He was in Afghanistan, and I planned the wedding. He was gone, and he called me and said, we have to cancel. I'm not coming home. So I canceled the wedding. Luckily, he did actually come back fairly close to our original date, but I had canceled the wedding because I didn't know when he would be back. So we ended up having a courthouse wedding. And it was really quick. It was just family. And we just got it done because I was like, well, we already planned on getting married. I want to get married. And anyways, we did. And then the same year I was pregnant, and my daughter, I became preeclamptic, and she was prematurely born through via emergency C-section. And she did not survive. I almost didn't survive. She lived about a week in the NICU. Her body just wasn't developed enough. And so we had to let her go. And so she passed. And, sorry. So, anyways, I was telling my friend about that, and I was explaining, I was like, when I got a tattoo, like, of my daughter's name, I put one big flower, and then I put 2 smaller flowers. And I don't know why. I think aesthetically, I liked it. But I had always said, like, oh, well, we're going to redo our wedding because we had to have a courthouse wedding. And now it's coming up we're celebrating 15 years this year, and we were just talking about how on our 20th anniversary, we're going to do a renewal of our vows. And that would be a second wedding that wasn't because of death or divorce. I have 2 surviving children right now. So I had 3 children, and 1 passed. It's strange because it took so many years for this all to come to pass, and I didn't believe it at first. I was wanting to shake it off as a person who just wanted to make someone uncomfortable. But now I see that it was supernatural, and it was years and years coming. So I guess the point of the call is that sometimes you have these experiences, and it just takes years and years for you to see it. I appreciate it. Love your show. Big fan. Thanks again. Bye.
Oh, Christine, I'm sorry for your loss, but thank you for having the courage to share your experience. And what an impactful experience it was, and a powerful premonition as well, albeit a tragic and life-altering one. Now, the rational side of my brain wants to write this off to coincidence. Maybe the guy just made a guess, trying to impress young Christine, and simply got lucky. It could happen. But that's a fairly bold thing to predict. And it certainly doesn't help him out in the flirting department. That is a mood killer right there. So that same logically thinking half of my brain tells me that if it was an attempt to woo poor Christine, it was a doomed attempt from the start. Which makes me think that it's likely that wasn't the man's intention. And that's when the imaginative side of my noggin begins churning, and I start asking the tough questions. Who are they that told him he must speak with Christine? How was the information delivered? And why on earth did he feel the need to share it? then that leads me to remember my own premonitions, and how they've probably come off as creepy as well. After all, I did out several pregnancies unprovoked. And hopefully I wasn't as skeezy about it as the man that approached our caller. But regardless of what it was or how it happened, I am very sorry that it did, Christine. It's an awful thing, whether you were warned about it or not.
And less than...
Hey, bada, sorry.
They stick together.
Yes, absolutely.
In addition, I'll tell you one thing.
Carnation use a higher quality.
Now, folks, next up is an entry from Ashley, in parts unknown.
Hi, Derek. This is Ashley. I only recently found your show a few weeks ago, and I'm only in season 5, but I love the show, and I decided to go ahead and call in with this experience. So in 2015, myself and 2 of my girl cousins decided to go on a girls' trip to St. Augustine. We are all really interested in the paranormal, so we love to do ghost tours and historical tours of the area that we visit. On this particular day in St. Augustine, we rented some bikes and we were riding around, and it was the evening at this time, and I had decided to show them a chapel that's located off of San Marcos Ave because I had an experience there, and I'll call back another time about that experience. So anyways, we ride along a side street to see this chapel called Lady of La Leche Chapel. It's located in a cemetery. So we're on the side street, and across from the chapel are houses. So we check out the chapel, we turn around, and we just happened to look up at one of the houses there, and there was a man standing in the window. He was wearing all black. He was not transparent. He was wearing a very large, wide brim hat. You can clearly see his outline of his shoulders, but the man had no distinguishable facial features. They were all kind of blacked out. I did reach out to my cousins before recording this to make sure that what I saw was the same thing that they saw, and they did confirm the same details. So after seeing that man, obviously it scared us, so we rode away quickly on our bikes, but we did stop near the end of the street. Was just, maybe like 20 seconds later, and we turned around to take a look at the house, but obviously there was nothing there. So the next day we revisited the area, and as expected, there was nothing in the window. And located where the chapel is, there is also a church with a gift shop, and that gift shop is actually run by nuns. So we go inside to check it out, and my curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to start up a convo with the nun, and I asked her, if the church owns the houses across the street, and she said that they do. And I asked her if priests live there. She said that they do. The clergy lives there. And then I asked her, what the priests normally wear. And she proceeded to say that, on their off days, they just wear regular clothes. So I asked her if, in particular, do they wear long black overcoat type robes with wide brim hats? And she said that they do wear robes, but they are not long black ones. And for this particular time of the year, that the priests are currently wearing white robes with purple decorations on them for the Mass, but that's only during the Mass. So I just thanked her for her time, and we left. Never really revisited this experience or thought about it much until I started listening. But I did think to myself that even if it were a priest or a person that was in that window, what they were wearing was very, very odd, especially for Florida, because in Florida there are only 2 seasons. It's either hot or hotter. And, it'd be weird for someone to be wearing a long overcoat inside the house and a wide brim hat especially in the middle of the night. It didn't make sense to me. So that's really it. Thank you, and keep up the good work, Derek. Love the show.
Thank you, Ashley, for the phone call. Now, this is one of those types of stories that at first sounds really extraordinary. But when you think about it and break down the events, it could be easily explained. You see, it's simple. Perhaps there was a man up there, or perhaps a mannequin or dress form that was holding a costume or uniform. And maybe whatever it was simply moved the following morning. From the street view, it looked just as though there was someone or something standing up there. But in reality, it was just a trick of the eye. Then again, I was not there, and I do not know all that Ashley knows. So maybe there's more to this experience, or perhaps it was simply something supernatural that is yet to be explained. But I love Ashley's gumption. Asking the nun working the gift shop was a great addition to the story. So thank you, Ashley, for both the call and for digging down deeper for the truth. Now, real fast, don't forget to visit our merchandise shop at monstersamonguspodcast.com and by clicking on the shop tab. All sales go directly back to the show. No third-party vendors soaking up your contribution. And better yet, all our gear is created by paranormal-themed artists you already know and love. So visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab today. And folks, that brings us to tonight's finale. And this evening I have something I happen to know many of you are gonna love. And I think that's enough of a tease. Wouldn't want to give anything away. Mac from Illinois. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, Derek. It's Mac from Illinois. Told you I'd call back. So I'm listening to Season 15, Episode 7, and my story that I'm about to tell you, you can probably mark it under a military special if you wish. So, as I'm listening to this episode, you're talking about the mirrored men, and suddenly it triggered a memory from an incident that happened while I was out training one year. So this was about somewhere in the late 90s, I think. So this one night we were out training, we're driving around, and it's dark. There's no lights anywhere. Of course, we're under blackout conditions. We stop, and we huddle up with our platoon sergeant to talk about what's going to happen next. As we're standing there, there's a whole group of us, probably about 12 people. And to my left, in the woods, I hear something. And I wasn't the only one. I looked over at one of my squad mates. I said, "Hey, you hear that? It sounds like somebody's walking over there." And like, "Yeah, okay, let's go check it out." So, of course, we do our thing. We go over and walk over toward the wood line a little bit. And I step in behind some bushes. And I swear to you, Derek, I heard 3 men walking towards us in the woods. I walked out a little further, and sure enough, I see 3 black shadows, fully dressed soldiers walking towards us. Here's what's weird. I'm not the only one who saw these 3 men. So I start calling out, "Halt, who's there? Halt, stop." You know, the whole gamut of what we're supposed to do. They weren't stopping. They kept walking. My 2 squad mates were to my right and behind me. They did the same thing. They were calling out, "Hey, halt, stop," whatever, you know. They were there. They weren't stopping. We were challenging them, and I swear we were muzzle to muzzle, and these guys kept coming at us. Suddenly, my platoon sergeant says, "Hey, what's going on over there?" He says, "I got soldiers in front of me. They're not stopping. We're challenging them." And he walks over a little ways, and he says, "There's nothing there." And as soon as he said that, Derek, those shapes that I saw as 3 men suddenly disappeared and turned into trees. I didn't see trees when I walked into that wood line. I saw a slightly open area with 3 fully dressed soldiers in black shadow outline walking towards us. My squad mates agreed there was men there, because otherwise none of us would have challenged them. So I can mark this under, what did we see? Was it just a trick of the light and we just thought we saw something, or was there something there that suddenly disappeared as soon as he said something? I don't know. It's a good question. Your guess is as good as mine. I'd love any kind of theories. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Mac. The Mirrored Men. Now, for those of you that are living under a rock, the Mirrored Men is a phenomenon that I uncovered all the way back on the first season of this program. I shared a story my friend had been telling me since college about 3 men that look and move identically, and that are associated with bouts of missing time. We later learned that strange weather and strange facial details also often find their way into Mirrored Men reports. But this is the first I've ever heard of these odd entities turning into a tree, or even blending into their surroundings. And there didn't seem to be any mention of missing time or odd or inclement weather as well. And their appearance as soldiers is certainly brand new to me. So you decide for yourself, was this a true Mirrored Men experience? Or something that somehow just seems similar? Now, since we're talking about the infamous Mirrored Men, I thought this would be a great opportunity to share a story I found recently on a website I frequent called Phantoms and Monsters, a collection of written accounts from researcher Lon Strickler. Now, this story was originally obtained by our friends at Expanded Perspectives. I grew up in a small town, and this particular thing happened in an even smaller town. I was 16. My best friend and I worked at a fast food restaurant. Our boyfriends normally picked us up from work, and if it was early enough or the weekend, we usually went to one of our homes. If not, he'd drop me off at home. My mom was very lenient, so I didn't have to tell her what I was doing. She knew who I was with and knew I'd be home. Now, this night happened to be Halloween, and instead of the usual, somebody had the idea to ride around before we had to be home. It was around 8 p.m. There was an old, long-closed cement plant in the smaller town, and from the sounds of it, it sounded pretty creepy. I had only heard of it before, and that night found myself on my way there. I wasn't afraid, just going with the flow and having fun with my friends. It was myself, my best friend, another girl, and our 2 boyfriends in the car. The old plant used to be a thriving, active business, built in the early 1900s, but had long closed down. It was situated along the outskirts of town, along a very long 2-lane dark road with no street lights. It was well past any residential area. We drove out to the plant, which took about 15 minutes. My boyfriend was driving. I was in the front passenger seat, and the other 3 were in the back. We pulled up to the plant, which was on our left, but my boyfriend did a U-turn and parked along the fence. So the plant is now on our right. We were all talking, just saying how old the place was and what it must have been like to see it in its earlier days. There were machine parts and metal and other debris all over the large lot. Even in the dark, you could make out the junk. We hadn't been there maybe 5 minutes when the 2 guys decided to get out and get closer to the fence for a more dramatic experience. It truly wasn't scary, but the other guys were making noises trying to scare us girls. We all started laughing, but immediately stopped. Out of nowhere, lights came on in the doorways, windows of the abandoned building. It was as if somebody turned on a light switch that lit up 20 or 30 windows at the same time. In the lights were standing these huge, buff, tall, idle-standing men that had long hair. They didn't walk up to the light. They were already in the light. They didn't appear to be standing behind the structures of the building on the inside, but on the outside of the building, as if on a balcony or ledge. All the men were uniform, all the same size and stature, not saying a word, not moving. They had balled up fists and seemed to have work boots on. I didn't notice any wind blowing before, but you could see their long hair blowing softly in the wind, all in unison. You could see their huge arm muscles, but strangely, these things were featureless. You could assume that they were men, but their bodies were like shadows, blacker than black. You could not make out any facial features or clothing. Nothing. They just stood there perfectly still. I don't know how long before my friend broke the silence with her scream, but we were mesmerized. We were only staring for a few seconds, but it felt like 100 minutes. She screamed and the two boys ran back to the car. We flew out of the dirt-packed area, by the fence along the road and back onto the pavement, and rode completely in silence. My boyfriend was the first to ask what had just happened. Nobody really knew, but we all saw them. We never discussed it after that night, and not once in the 29 years since it happened. We were all still friends, by the way. Now, a link to that full account can be found in the show notes at monstersamonguspodcast.com/show notes. And like Mac's entry, a lot of the Mirrored Men mile markers are there, but some key ones may still be missing. Either way, I suppose anytime you see three men moving in unison and strange things begin to occur in close relation, you almost have to call it a genuine Mirrored Men experience. Thank you again, Mac, for sharing your entry. Let's hope for your sake that it wasn't the Mirrored Men you were dealing with. And folks, that's going to wrap it up for this part of the show. But please stick around until after the outro and ad. I'll be back with some more content and information on how you can get hundreds of hours of Monsters Among Us episodes completely free. But first, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. And please do me a solid and leave us a rate and review wherever that's possible. While you're at it, be sure to follow us on social media and over at YouTube as well. Don't forget to check out our film, Shadows in the Desert High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle. It's streaming all over the place, and you can find out where by visiting borregotriangle.com. Finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Co.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. There it is, folks. A big thanks for tuning in this evening. A huge thanks to all of our submitters. And a hearty good night to you all.
And contact you.
Still, I don't care about it. The first one I spiked.
So perspective, it's easier to do that.
And I think there's everything to do with it.
Now, tonight's secret entry takes us just down the hill from me. Literally. About 14 miles as the crow flies from where my bud is currently planted. Which, at the very least, makes this kind of special for me. So won't you join me in the excitement? This is Sherry's entry from Parts Unknown.
Hi, my name is Sherry. My encounter happened when I lived in Hesperia, California. I felt prompted to call in after listening to season 15, episode 12. It was kind of comforting to know that I wasn't alone in seeing this creature that I saw. So Hesperia, for people that don't know, it's in the foothills. It's in a valley, kind of like a bowl, and up in the high desert The road that I was on, it separates Oak Hills from Hesperia. It was really late at night. It was Ranchero Road. This happened back in 2005, 2006. So I was driving. I had a little sedan, and I don't remember where I was coming from or where I was going. And I saw this creature as I stopped at a stop sign back in 2005, 2006. There wasn't anything on that road. It was very desolate, very dark. And I only saw like wings and feet, and it was like it was in the middle of the road. I remember it was slammed on my brakes, and it just flew up in front of me, just right in front of my car. It was black. I didn't see facial features. I just remember seeing the bottom of these wings and feet, and it just popped up. Like I surprised it. That sounds stupid, but it's almost like that's what happened. And I was completely petrified. I remember turning around and going back to the way that I came. I went to Main Street where there were lights and just took the long way around to where I was going. That's all I remember doing. I don't remember anything else, but it was absolutely terrifying. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the podcast.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, Hesperia. A very odd city, indeed, especially for the SoCal area. Now, Sarah and I have been toying around with a move to the desert area, and Hesperia was once on our short list. It's up and coming, it's just not ready for me yet. But what a great place for a creature sighting. It's nestled behind the San Bernardino mountain range, the range I happen to live in. It's also not too far from open desert and vast empty stretches of land. And it's somewhat near a few different military installments, including 29 Palms and Edwards Air Force Base. So the conditions are right for something strange to go down there. But a big black winged beast. Truthfully, that's not what I had in mind. That's a creature better reserved for places like Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or perhaps the skyscrapers in Chicago, Illinois. Not the high deserts of Southern California. Not Hesperia. But as odd and amazing as this report is, about huge wings and feet lifting above a car, believe it or not, I actually have a more logical explanation that could explain this strange experience. Because you see, down here in the desert lives North America's largest land bird, a bird that, up until recently, was nearly as rare as Mothman himself. The iconic California condor.
The California condor, once speeding towards extinction, is making a comeback.
We are seeing gains in the population. We are seeing condors breeding in the wild and pairing up and finding their own food and doing everything that they need to do to be successful.
With a 9.5-foot wingspan, the California condor is the largest land bird in North America. But at one point in the 1980s, worldwide, there were only about 24 of them known to be left in the wild.
Now, it's great to hear these living dinosaurs are making a comeback. And that clip courtesy of KTLA, News 5 out of Los Angeles. And yeah, I know this account took place back in 2005 or 6, and the condor wasn't as prevalent as it is today. There's an estimated 250 wild specimens remaining. But it's still just as likely that she saw one of those lift off the road in front of her as it would be a monster of some sort. But of course, that's not nearly as fun. So I did a little digging in the area in hopes of finding some sort of winged cryptid that could also explain what Sherry saw. And much to my surprise, I actually came up with something. At least, something adjacent. They call it the Lone Pine Mountain Devil, and it's supposed to be a large, bird-like or bat-like reptile with 2 sets of wings, bright glowing eyes, and razor-sharp claws on each of its arms and legs. The Mountain Devil. Now, they really should have come up with a better moniker than that, but I guess I sort of understand, because the devil is said to only eat the face and torso of its victims, leaving behind a heinous-looking corpse in the process. These things, if real, seem to be pretty nasty. Now, the only issue here is that these mountain devils are mostly reported, I use the term reported loosely, up near the city of Lone Pine, California, in the lower Sierra Nevada, a good 2 or 3 hours north of the location of Sherry's sighting. So is that too far for a 4-winged creature? Are condors returning to the high desert? Or was it something else altogether that Sherry saw that evening? I will leave it up to you to decide. But we thank you, Sherry, for being kind enough to call in. And I'll be sure to keep my eyes open next time I'm down the hill. And of course, I'll let you know, should I see anything. Well, folks, it's that time of the evening where we cross the threshold of the paywall and dip into the after show. An after show we like to call the Beyond. It's over here that we play longer calls, we do some deep dives, we compare and contrast against previous stories, and we even feature a rebuttal from time to time. So basically, it's a more laid-back and personal version of the main show. Something I promise you'll all love. To join us, just visit patreon.com and search for Monsters Among Us Podcast. Then join the $1 level for ad-free content and the $5 level for tons of bonus content, including the conclusion of this episode, where we will not only revisit the sound a landing saucer makes, but we will be, for the first time I think, touching on the mega-famous Phantom of Flatwoods, West Virginia. And you can check it all out for free by taking advantage of our 7-day free trial, all found on the Patreon website. So go there, search out Monsters Among Us, then sign up and join us for stories like Larry's, out of parts unknown.
Hi, I'm going to call myself Larry because I don't want to use my real name. I used to work for a security company in Los Angeles, California, and I was posted at a particular Department of Water and Power plant. These events happened probably 20 years ago. I've attempted to tell my story to various podcasts, and none of them have ever used it because I assume they do not believe me. But this is a true story. What happened is this. 3 consecutive times I had a entity come and bother me. Let's call it an entity because I have no idea what it was.